Good afternoon, everyone. The time has turned to 2 o'clock, a Friday afternoon. So, what better way of ending the week than a webinar with about the hospital exemption? So, with all that said, I will again welcome you and welcome Inge-Marie Svane that
Thank you.
is joining me today. I'm Jacob Wiestel. I'm an associate professor at the Center for Advanced Studies in Bioscience Innovation Law at the Faculty of Law, University of Copenhagen. And Inge-Marie, maybe you will present yourself.
Sure. Yeah, so thank you for the invitation. I really look forward to our talk about the hospital exemption. So my name, yeah, it is Inge-Marie Svane, and I'm a medical doctor, consultant in oncology. When I work in the clinic, I take care of melanoma patients at Zealand. So both regions at the moment, it will become one soon. But I have also been working with cancer immunology and immunotherapy for all my life, and I am a director of a research center in cancer immunotherapy, and I also have a professorship in the same topic. So I'm situated at Herlev Hospital, so that is why you can see the color of the door.
Great. So yeah, because one of the ideas here was actually to create this dialogue about the hospital exemption and also talk to you could say the frontline people that both have patients between their hands and also then a very direct kind of application of this hospital exemption. So try to start a dialogue about experiences with that, different positions, what's it good for, and so forth.
Yeah.
So that's what we hope to kind of to dive into for the next around 45 minutes. First, we can kind of, to place, I don't know how many of you know what you know about the hospital exemption. So just a brief kind of, the hospital exemption is this peculiar little thing that was introduced in the ATMP regulation from 2007 that allows hospitals under certain circumstances to treat patients with a drug that has not gone through the kind of the regulatory marketing approval procedure, and to make this drug for particular patients on a patient-to-patient basis. So one of the issues here with the hospital exemption is, of course, okay, so why is the hospital exemption important? Why did we get the hospital exemption? What was the thoughts behind it? So I don't know, Marie, what would you why do we need a hospital exemption?
I think it's a good way to bridge between the positive clinical trials or a specific positive clinical trial and then market approval of the drug afterwards. So I think it can actually bridge it. So in many situations, the pharmaceutical companies they establish this kind of early access program, and it's I would say almost the same. So they deliver the drug without any cost for the hospitals in the period while they are applying for approval from EMA. In that way, the patients get access to the drug, and they also get the doctors to get more experience with the drug while waiting for the approval from EMA. But, I guess my experience are a bit different because here in my center we work with the ATMP, we work with cellular therapies, and we have our own facility. So we produce the cell product that we are using in the clinical trial treating our cancer patients. And in that setting, we actually wanted to do the same thing as the pharmaceutical companies, you could say, because we performed a phase 3 trial, so a larger randomized trial on T-cell therapy for metastatic melanoma patients, and we did it together with a hospital in the Netherlands, National Cancer Institute in Amsterdam, and it was positive. So we thought that we could maybe use the same frame of this hospital exemption. And then our experience was very different in Denmark and the Netherlands actually. So they achieved an approval for that, but in Denmark it was not a possibility.
Okay. So now you say the experience was different. So the Dutch hospital they got a hospital exemption, and in Denmark you didn't.
Yeah. So, but they in the Holland they were allowed simply to treat patients. So it was a more general permit. to use this T-cell therapy for the next years for so many patients without applying per patient. In Denmark, I think for me, it's not really clear how they distinguish between the different approvals. I mean, you also have the compassionate use, and when I look at the website of our regulatory unit, it's like they claim that the compassionate use is almost the same as a hospital exemption, but I don't think that's true because I mean the compassionate use is really for patients without any other chance to have any kind of therapy, and I applied for a more general permit to use this T-cell therapy, which they called like a general permission, and I was declined. But instead, I was allowed to apply per patient. So
Hmm.
now every time I have a patient who I think fit into this treatment, I have to seek approval from the Mediscience Agency for specifically that patient.
Hmm. So it sounds like the difference between the Dutch experience, where it seems like they had agreed on some kind of general framework
Yeah,
for approval. So they would, okay, if you act within these parameters, you can
yeah.
count on being allowed to use this treatment. Where in Denmark, we are more in a case by case situation.
Yeah, and I mean that it works also. I would say I was a bit afraid that it would have a lot of lag time in the system. So every time when I submitted an application, I just have to sit and wait for weeks. But it's not really like that. So the first time we passed on an application to the Mediscience Agency, it took maybe a week or so. But after that, it's only almost from day to day if the patient fit into what we have kind of agreed on.
Okay. But
Yeah.
that still sounds like a fairly agile, or at least
Yeah.
expedient system. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so as well. It
Hmm.
works. Yeah.
So now you mentioned these different ways to get a treatment to the patient. So there's, of course, you can conduct a kind of a regular clinical trial as you did. Then there's this compassionate use route, where I agree that that would usually be when you have a patient where you really don't have many options, none at all probably, and you say, okay, then we'll risk trying something that is
Try
not
something.
very
Yeah. Yeah.
well tried
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
there's this hospital exemption that somehow should cover something else than these possibilities. And I know
Yeah.
we're actually pretty first movers in EU with introducing this hospital exemption, and in the US they're discussing how to do something similar. Is
Yeah.
it your
But
impression that it has made a difference in Europe that we have this hospital exemption?
for some countries, it definitely has made a huge difference, especially for Spain, where they are interpreting these regulations in a completely different and far more flexible way. Because I mean, it's the same as I understand it. You're the law. I mean, it's the same regulation in all of Europe, but the interpretation can differ from country to country. And I just attended a seminar yesterday from EMA where it was very obvious that the different countries has extremely different experiences. For some countries, they are not able to use ATMPs in that setting at all. And in other countries like Spain, they kind of authorize new drugs based on academic productions, new ATMPs from academia, independently of a market-approved commercial drug for the same treatment.
Hmm.
So that's the extreme in both directions, you could say. But I guess it is meant to be for patients where you do not have a market-approved drug
Hmm.
for the same situation. So I would anticipate that if T-cell therapy, for example, are approved in Europe based on a commercial drug, then I will not be allowed anymore to treat my patient with this in-house produced ATMP.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, also I only heard the beginning of this webinar yesterday, and I have the same impression as you.
Yeah.
I heard, I think, two or three countries. I heard Spain, Latvia, and Holland, I think,
Yeah.
describe their systems. I have the same impression that it was very different systems, but also very different degrees of implementation.
Yeah.
It
as well.
sounded like in Spain that that they also had put in place a very kind of elaborate system of quality controls and
Yeah.
follow-ups, and so they had built a whole system around it that made it this kind of very controlled route of bringing treatments to the patients.
And I think that's a very important topic that you're bringing forward here because, I mean, if we do not have any kind of reporting or registering of the efficacy and the side effects when you use these therapies under hospital exemption, it can be really serious for the patients because you need to be able to have this pharmacovigilance that you know that you're not harming the patient. And if it is a very in-house produced therapy, it's the only way to do it that you actually ask for a report. I know that in Spain they kind of have this stare way where they start with the compassionate use with if they have a new genetically engineered T cells they want to test or want to build on. They told me that they start out in a compassionate use setting so they can just do it for one or two or three patients. And then when they have a certain number, they then ask for a hospital exemption. And then they can expand further. And then if they really want it or they are asked for it by the regulatory authorities, they can finally make the clinical trial. So that way they kind of turn it around. Sorry, that was my phone. They kind of turn it around where I would say you should have some kind of scientific evidence first. And that should definitely be in the framework of a clinical trial because here you have all the regulation, you have all the good, clinical practice and GMP, good manufacturing practice. So you have a lot of regulations which are really securing the patient in regard to the treatment and how you report the results.
Mm.
And based on that, I would say it should be possible also to have this hospital exemption if you are covering a gap in the therapeutic area.
Mm. Yeah, because you start saying you started with doing clinical trials and
Yeah,
then tried to use hospital exemption, where in Spain they've done the opposite. So starting with hospital exemption, and then when
yeah.
they had kind of proof of the treatment there, then they would go to a clinical trial.
Yeah, that was actually because they were asked to do so by EMA because they are at the moment on a path towards an market approval actually in EMA
Mm.
based on what they have been doing in the hospital exemption, the data they picked up there.
Mm.
Um, so what happened for me was when I did not get a general permit, then the whole frame around that was lost because if you get a general permit, you are required to report on side effects and efficacy to the authorities, but that is not the case when it's per patient. So after 1 year, I decided that I believe this is really important. So we made a report and I passed it on to the Mediscience Agency. And they replied, "Thank you so much. We're very happy about that, and we would like to have one another time." And I think that's maybe not enough. Maybe we should really have a regulation also in that setting, because I mean, I feel like an honest person, but you can't really be sure that people are reporting all they see. Like if you are neglecting the patient who didn't respond or had severe side effects, who picked it up?
Mm.
So I think in that way, we need to talk about how to do this so that we secure the patients, but also that we secure accessibility,
Mm.
especially of the new ATMPs, as soon as possible for the
Mm.
patients, because the whole approval process in EMA it takes such a long time. So many patients feel that they cannot wait for it, and so do we as medical doctors. We really want them to. Um, yeah, to have the treatment as soon as we know that it's available, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I think, if we grasp onto this, making treatments available as fast and safely as possible.
Mm.
Um, I think an interesting question, I think, is what do you see as the goal of the hospital exemption? You said that in Spain, then they were required to kind of go on to clinical trials and towards a marketing authorization. Do you see the kind of, is the purpose of hospital exemption to bridge this gap towards marketing authorization, or does it have its right in its own as an exception, not going towards marketing authorization?
Yeah, I would say both. First of all, of course, the gap is very important, but it's not so, I mean, frequent that you have academia being able to produce or prepare an ATMP which is not originally deriving from a pharmaceutical company, but some centers have that possibility, and among others we do, and they do in Spain. And in that setting, you can actually I mean cover a gap. Like for example, here in Denmark, it's not it was not made as a hospital exemption, but we made a clinical trial, but we did it on a drug which was has already been proven, you could say, in other trials. But we made our in-house production of what is called a CAR T, which is a genetic engineered T cell for hematological cancers. So we established that production here in-house, and then we, by the frame of a clinical trial, we treated patients at Rigshospitalet with this in-house produced drug. But now they have expanded the approval of the commercial products. So in that way, we are not recruiting patients anymore to this clinical trial. So that was another way to kind of cover a gap, you could
Mm.
say, because there was a lot of discussion of the indication, how broad should the indication be? And the Mediscience Council were turning some of the indications down in the beginning, but now finally they have expanded it, and then they didn't need anymore that we are doing this in-house production for the patients. So that's another way to do it, which I think again shows that you can in some situation cover the gap, but the whole you need, I mean, the whole facility that you need, the whole system you need to be able to produce these T cells and to engineer them and so on. It's not something that you are establishing in 1 or 2 years. It's like we have been working on this for many years.
Mm.
So it's rare that you are able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another issue that often these HMPs require very specialized
Yeah.
manufacturing facilities. I know the Creatic project that is the host of this webinar is rebuilding a whole university hospital in Czech Republic to be able to provide these CAR T cell therapies.
Yeah, and I
So
say that's maybe is also. Then we move on to the question about the pricing, uh, the high price of these ATMPs, which is also an issue that is, I mean, it's limiting accessibility because of the financial issues for many countries actually to cover the high price of these treatments. And here you could also argue that for these countries, which the alternative would be that their patients are not offered these therapies, which in some situations can be cura curative, right, for the patient. Um, they might be able to establish like an in-house production of the same kind of treatment, the same cells with the same genetic engineering, and treat their patients under the regulations of hospital exemptions. But then as I understand it, you should correct me if I'm wrong. It's actually the host country which decide how to interpret these hospital exemption regulations. So it means that, for example, Spain, they have decided on their own that they approve this hospital exemption of a product which is competing with a commercial product, and they will use it in Spain for a lower price and produced by themselves.
I can say on the one hand, then the idea of a regulation that where this hospital exemption is that regulation should preferably harmonize the
Mm.
rules in Europe. That's the idea because they have a direct effect in all member states when they're passed. But on the other hand, in the same regulation, it says that it's the national authorities that are to kind of to govern and handle this
Mm.
uh, possibility of having a hospital exemption, and that can obviously, as we can see, lead to
Mm.
very different interpretations. Because it definitely, I think the webinar yesterday very eloquently showed how different countries have both kind of have very, very different approaches to the hospital exemption. And I think you also touch upon it, but also very different reasons
Yeah,
for doing it. I think it was Latvia that said that well, one of their problems was that for some drugs they were not marketed in
no,
Latvia at all
yeah,
because there was such a small market. There's what
yeah,
3 million or something like people in Latvia. So pharma companies would sometimes decide not to market in that in Latvia because the market was too small to make all whatever you need to do to
Yeah.
accommodate the individual country. So for them, it was also a question of simply, yeah, getting the drugs to the market. And in other countries, it could be a question also of price of the drugs. Not that they're not there, but they're simply
Yeah,
too expensive.
absolutely. Yeah,
And
so
then,
they have the quality, like they look into price as compared to the life gain of patients. So yeah, so it can be say countries within the Europe which has no approval of the drug as well.
yeah.
But I was also thinking an important thing is also about the capacity because when some of these companies achieve the approval from EMA, the market approval, then they didn't have really the capacity to deliver to cover all the world, right? All Europe or all US at the same time. So in that way, there can also be a restriction in availability simply of the
Mm.
drug. And on the other hand, if you kind of use this in-house produced drugs, they are even more limited in capacity normally. It's
Mm.
very normally you have like a couple of clean rooms and you can only cover so many patients. So it's not like you can, for example, cover a full country normally from one center. So maybe we should also be looking more into like combinations of these things. I think it's okay to have some kind of competition towards the pharmaceutical industry, but of course it needs to be fair in a certain way. And I know that there's a lot of discussions of how to put the price because they of course claim that they need to cover a lot of development costs. They have been through large scale phase 3 trials and sometimes because they haven't usually not with the ATMPs, but anyway, it has been costly for them as well to develop the drug. Um, so it's a very important discussion, but it's not an easy way, I think, to agree or to decide how to move forward exactly. Uh,
I think
yeah,
it points back a little bit to that. It seems like there's besides that, there's different interpretations of the hospital exemption. That also goes back to that there are different perceptions of what the function of the hospital exemption should be.
yeah,
Is it to
mhm,
bridge a gap? Is it to ensure that you actually get some drugs on the market that are not marketed, or is it to address this price gap there is, or what is actually the function that we envisage for this exemption? I
yeah,
just speaking of, and I think Spain is often, as we also have done it, used as an example of a kind of very progressive use of the hospital exemption.
mm,
And I just read an opinion that some Spanish doctors wrote in Nature, I think, a couple of years back, as a comment to the proposal for a new pharmaceutical regulation, where they say that they also see a synergy between the hospital exemption and industry. So
mm.
they would, as the hospital exemption stands now, then there should not be a drug that have a marketing approval for that indication that you use the hospital exemption for. But they actually propose that you should allow the hospital exemption also for drugs that have been marketed, because that would allow researchers, academic researchers, to engage in improved manufacturing and improvements of the product. So actually seeing this kind of a synergy between the industrial, the pharma industry development and academic development of drugs.
But
Um,
that's completely true, and that is also another issue that it's if you are, for example, to treat your patient with commercial CAR T, you make a leukapheresis, like a blood, and deliver the blood to the company, and they do all the stuff with the cells and send it back, and it's this is like a black, not a box, but a black bag that you give back to the patients because you know nothing about it, and the only way you can further develop on it is actually to be engaged in that and to take samples from that drug the cell back and then to also take samples from the patient and to kind of further develop. So I think you're completely right there that and they would also need that, the companies, that we continue the development of also their cellular products as well.
mm.
Um, yeah, so I think and I hope we will settle in some kind of balance that I think there's room for all of us. at the moment we do not even together have the full capacity to produce for all potential candidates for these ATMPs. And
Mm.
then there's also, I mean, the issue of the frequency of the disease, because of course it needs to be they need to be able to have I mean, it needs to be they earn some money on that. And if you have a very rare disease situation, it's not really something that they are moving forward with in the pharmaceutical industry. And here you can also have a space where academia might have a platform.
Mm.
And what I have been talking about also for years is that maybe you should look at it that what the drug is for the engineered cells is actually the gene. So maybe you should license, like we can buy a license from a company to prepare the cells with their genes. So we finalize the product in-house, but they are kind of delivering the gene for it. Um, so you have licensed production sites at both in academia, but also in commercial places. I think that could also be a way forward, because then you don't have to send people cells across the world from Europe
Mm.
to US and back again.
Yeah. That would also be very much in line with having more kind of decentralized manufacturing
Yeah.
closer to the patient.
Yeah, and then what is the argument for and against that? So I think the argument for is that you have a very short time from decision on this is the therapy to give until the patient had received the therapy, because you are limiting the time for passing the product around the world, and then standing in line maybe at the commercial unit for production and so on. So I know that for example, when we collaborate with Rigshospitalet around this CAR-T production, the turnaround time is less than 2 weeks. So we simply just receive the blood product, and 12 days later we send back the treatment to them. And we are 7 kilometers from
Mm.
each other, right? So within half an hour, it's in the hospital. But if it's a commercial drug, it might last 4 to 6 weeks before you have it. Actually, you have the treatment, and it might not seem so long. But if you are a hematological cancer patient, it can mean the whole difference. And
Mm.
sometimes they need to bridge them with chemotherapy while waiting for the product.
Yeah.
On the
So,
other hand, you could say, well, if you make this decentralized production, it's also a matter of homogeneity of the product, whether
mm.
you are really able to do it exactly the way that the right procedures to achieve the fully potent product. And that, of course, is also something which should be covered by a licensing that, for example, like for our unit, it's a GMP unit, and it's regulated and it is inspected, and all our procedures is certified. We have a quality system and so on. So you need to build all that up,
Mm.
of course.
That leads me to another point, because I think you also mentioned that the HMPs, a lot of the application of HMPs are within the kind of rare disease area, where there's both rare cancers and other inheritable rare diseases where HMPs has a big potential. But given that it's a rare disease, you have very few patients, often this spread all over Europe. And I guess it's not feasible that each member state in Europe would develop competences within all these different applications, also given that there's more than 8,000 different rare diseases or something like that. So a strategy that people are talking about is, to have centers specializing both around the different countries, but also across Europe in different areas.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Also to enable that you can then get these specialized production facilities. But that would also require kind of patient mobility. Uh,
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, you can cryopreserve these final products. They're doing that for the commercial product. They are when you receive them, they're cryopreserved and you
okay.
thaw them. Yeah. So we are not doing that because we are so close to the other hospitals. And what does that mean? That means that we have more living cells, of course, because some cells will die when you cryopreserve them and thaw them again.
Mm.
But I'm not sure that it really means anything to the potency of the drug as such. So that can be done. But I think I mean, if you have the competences to do cell therapy and production manufacturing, it's not so different depending on, for example, which gene you put into the cells. It can be like any gene, you have the procedures in your hand. Of course, it can be different cells, and then you need to grow them and feed them in different ways, but still, what you really need to be able to do is like handle cells in a very sterile and then homogeneous way. So I think in that way you can have production of several different kind of cellular products in the same facility and have the experience in that.
Mm. Do you think would that also make because now we're talking with the hospital exemption, talking about the kind of the regulatory challenges where
Mm.
here we have also some technical challenges. But do you think if we kind of put together the production of, for instance, cells in one place, would that also make it easier in relation to regulatory authorities and approvals to have kind of one big specialized?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, Um, I mean, you have an SOP for how to prepare exactly these cells, but then you have the whole system around it, and it can be the quality assessment, which also comprises like that it's still sterile. You don't have a like bacterial contamination, for example. You can like have flow cytometry for characteristics of this specific cell, but it's still the same method, and so on. Maybe a potency assay, but a lot of these things around it, it's actually almost the same, independently of which cell you're working with. Um, and the whole quality system is, and the system of having like qualified persons and so on. Um, so in that way, it's becoming more and more easy, for example, for us to implement new HMP manufacturing because
Mm.
we are building upon experience of many other kinds now.
Okay, so it sounds like we are going in the right direction despite the hiccups.
Yeah, yeah, I think for me, I think it would be a benefit if the regulatory units in the different countries have a closer communication around this, because if we really want common regulation in Europe, I think they should also try to align how they interpret it, because it is really unfair, you could say, if one country out of whole Europe are allowed to do all the things that we are not, right?
Mm.
Yeah, just because they have a more flexible regulatory frame.
So, but I don't, but I think the purpose of the webinar yesterday, my impression was that they're exactly right now collecting these experiences from different countries. We'll put them into a report, and I hope with the purpose of starting to kind of compare notes and,
Yeah,
and maybe get a more harmonized approach to it. Um,
I don't know who put it on the agenda. I'm actually not aware of that, but one of the things that I might be a bit nervous about is if it's really done by lobbies from the pharmaceutical industry, because they, of course, want to limit this possibility. Because it is really, they call it like unfair competition, right? Because they think that when we put a price on such a manufacturing one product, it's not comparable with their price because they have a completely different system they think they should
mm,
establish. And yeah, and and of course, it is. I will not be happy if the end of it will be that they are kind of uh, restricting the use of hospital exemption. I would
mm,
rather have that Denmark is opening a bit more up,
yeah.
because I think we will see more and more that the different countries are not able to approve drugs which are too expensive.
Mm.
Uh, it's a really high cost in the health uh, uh, industry with these ATMPs. It's extreme prices, right?
Mm. Yeah, but also there's been in Denmark at least there's been a lot of stories about the Medicines Council rejecting relatively many innovative
Yeah,
treatments.
Yeah.
You say they're placed in the world to reject the treatments if they find they are too expensive compared to what you get from it, the effect, what effect you get compared to what we already have. Um, but do you think could ATMPs and the hospital exemption be a way to, yeah, competing with, okay, we have this drug that was too expensive for the Medicines Council, but then we can, with the hospital exemption, do an academic drug that can do something. And would that create a kind of a competitive situation between hospital
Yeah.
exemption
Yeah,
and industry?
exactly. And
Yeah.
I think it's already starting. So, for example, in Spain, because they actually are manufacturing completely the same ATMP drug
Yeah.
uh, by the regulation of hospital exemption. So I guess they're not buying a lot from the companies based on
Mm.
that. So it is a competition, and yeah, so we need a discussion on how to settle this.
Yeah, I'll see if we can get a kind of the positive approach to it must be the Spanish one with the synergies between it and kind of mutual. But of course, we need to draw a line in the sand. Okay, when is it okay to use the hospital exemption?
Yeah.
So I can see Sora here. She agrees that the Estonian proposal for a new hospital exemption framework, where you can use it. Well, hospital exemption should be possible if a similar authorized product is not available on the Estonian market. So the kind of the threshold there would be if it's available in the
Yeah.
national market. And that would certainly make sense for also Estonia. I talked about Latvia, but I guess same situation. You have small countries where companies may choose not to launch a product. So what should they do?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
maybe, I mean, eventually you can envision the situation that they are they're declining the commercial product because they know they can then establish an academic one. So
That
in
would
that way, I mean, yeah, I think it can happen,
mm,
especially countries like in Spain. But another comment also to what I'm not quite agreeing on in the way they do it in Spain is that they are kind of um, moving around. It's a workaround in regard to the phase one trials, and I think we need to be very careful about that because there's a reason why we have the phase one trials, the first in human trials, the new drugs, because we can't really always know what will happen when we treat the patient.
mm,
And we need this very regulated way to treat one patient per time and to really uh, catch all the side effects that we see. And
mm,
to have the also independent people looking into whether this is still feasible and acceptable, this level of toxicity and so on. So I think to start out as a compassionate use with a completely new thing, I think I wouldn't do it. No.
mm. No, so I think it's a good point that it's there's different regulatory framework that would apply to making a classical clinical trial, a
Mm,
phase one clinical trial, and then a hospital exemption.
yeah. And then, of course, on the other hand, it's very expensive for academia to perform these trials.
Yeah.
It costs a lot of money, and it's not easy to get covering of these trials if you're
Mm,
only academia. So on the other hand, we also need some support then from the public uh, to be able to do it.
mm,
And it's everything that is costing. Also, like the authorities, they also ask us to pay for their approval and for their looking through the material and for meetings and for everything. Yeah.
mm. Yeah. So I think if we jump, we have 5 minutes,
Yeah.
let's more or less. So I think, since we are closing in on Christmas, we can make
Yeah.
wishes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I think, if we should wish for a better framework to get innovative treatments from laboratory to patients, what wishes would we make? What would we wish from the researchers and the doctors? What would you wish from regulatory authorities? What would you wish from industries? Don't know, will you start with making some wishes with one or any all of these?
Oh, that was a very large question, a very difficult one. Yeah, first of all, the first thing which came to my mind when you were asking me all these questions is actually we need some help about the regulation, right? Uh, for example, now where we have established this kind of, we call it an early access program, but I'm able to have approval per patient to treat with T-cell therapy. But I have also been struggling for 1.5 years together with the people from Holland to try to prepare for an EMA application, and it has been a nightmare. And I really do not have any experienced people to help me
Mm.
because it's not a normal thing that academia is applying EMA. And I
Mm.
think we can improve there. We can improve, and we can. I have discussed with the region to have like a path, a framework for how to do it, which is established in the region because they also needed to agree that they will actually cover the expenses for this treatment that I'm giving the patients. And that was also, it took a half year because they were kind of pushing back and forward and trying to let others buy or others pay and so on. So all in all, I think we need to set up a system and
Mm.
organize this because there will be more in the
Yeah.
future. Hopefully from our side and from the also from the industry side, there will be more of these advanced therapies being implemented. At the moment, it's the industry who decides whether a hospital can actually have the treatment or not. They
Mm.
need to have a qualification.
Yeah.
And I think that is incredible in Denmark that a private company should should give an accreditation to a hospital. This should be a public thing. We
Mm.
should take it in our own hands and manage it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I hear two wishes here,
Okay.
which is good. So both this kind of, I don't know, do you see when you talk about preparing an EMA application, do you see that's a question of that the EMA and researchers need to kind of find a common language, or do you think that
Yeah.
you substantially disagree on anything?
No, we haven't we do not understand their language at all because
Okay,
it's
so it's,
made
it's
for the
a
industry.
language understanding thing.
Yeah, and the amount of data they want and documents and all that stuff. It's so huge. So I mean, it's everything about the system which has just been building on, like we have been
Mm.
building on for GMP and TCP. That is, it's a monster which
Yeah,
will grow and grow.
yeah.
And I think it's the same thing with the EMA. Yeah,
I'm thinking because I know as a researcher, I also go out and apply for money for my research. And there's always a question of what do you apply for money for?
yeah,
And maybe there's something about also remembering to prioritize or apply for money for that piece of the work.
yeah, yeah. The
Um,
implementation. I mean, it's
yeah.
all about how to implement. The politicians are talking about all the time. We
Mm.
want to implement all the fantastic results from our researchers
Mm.
in healthcare,
Yeah.
but they haven't got any idea of how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I think from my own research, when I look into pharmaceutical legislation, I think there's
yeah,
definitely a different approach. As a researcher, your approach will often be driven by curiosity.
yeah.
When you're a regulator in the pharmaceutical area, the regulation there is very much driven by risk minimization.
Mm,
So two
that's
very different ways
that's right.
of approaching the world that can definitely meet, but you
Mm,
start from two very different points.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that was some great wishes. Um, and I think our time is also up. We
Yeah.
haven't had that many questions. I don't know if
Oh,
it's because we've been so, we've said so many smart things, so people haven't had anything to ask about, or we've just
no,
been
no, no,
talking too much. Or, but
no.
if anybody has some questions, it's now or never. There's one there. How is it in Denmark with the financing reimbursement of HMPs under the hospital exemption or under the
That's
application for an individual patient, as Inge mentioned? Inge,
yeah,
you might have something to say about that, I guess.
yeah. So there's not a clear uh, solution for that either. So I was pushed forward and back from the Mediscience Agency, who said they would not allow me to apply per patient unless I had covering of the expenses from the region. And the region told me we will not cover unless you have approval from the Mediscience Agency. And they went forth and back for almost half a year before I settled it. And then the regions together, all the regions together, they decided that they would cover. the expense. But I think they have never tried it before, actually.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's some learning for
Yeah.
the system as
Yeah,
such.
absolutely.
Again, not necessarily a disagreement, but an agreement on, okay, how do we do this?
Yeah. They
Yeah.
didn't have even have the code. They didn't have a code for the treatment, so they couldn't kind of require the or the apply for the pay from the other region because if you need a code to to send a bill, right? So it was really at a very low level
Hmm.
that they needed to establish the system. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So if you sign up to the Creatic ATMP newsletter, you can do that on Siebel's homepage. Maybe someone can throw a link in the chat if they're really fast.
Mhm.
You can sign up for our ATMP newsletter. We hope to get the first edition of it out next week. It's a newsletter that will focus mostly on these kind of regulatory, ethical, legal issues. And we love also if any of you hear about stuff you think should be in the newsletter, please advise us, and we will communicate it. So yeah, I see Emma. She has dropped
Mm.
a link in the chat. So if you're really fast, you can also go in and sign up already, which would be lovely. And we will provide you a steady feed 4 times a year of the most intriguing, exciting news in
Yeah.
the ATMP domain
Mhm.
you can think of.
Count me in.
Great. Laura, you have a question, comment? Please unmute and fire away.
Hi, hello.
Hi.
First, I want to thank you to Jacob and Inge-Marie for the very, very exciting discussion. I actually have millions of questions, but you already answered quite many. I have one question to Inge-Marie. Maybe you know, or your hospital or any other, which has used some therapy via hospital exemption, and then the hospital itself has authorized it later on. Do you have any information on this?
No, no. I actually thought that stem cells for many years were under the regulation of hospital exemption, but I was told by the medicines agency that this is not the case. It's just outside any frame. Because we have it's when you make minimal manipulation of cells. It's not really covered by these regulations. You can simply do it and put it back like a blood transfusion.
That
They
is
were,
exactly the question. The next
yeah,
question about autologous cell and gene therapies.
yeah,
What's with
yeah.
them? Because they actually don't have market in the sense, yeah, that
No,
they have usually single patient. How
I
do
think,
we
yeah.
change?
So I think it's a matter of how much you manipulate them. And even though we do not, for example, genetically modify our T cells for metastatic melanoma, it's still they are out in culture for weeks. Uh, and where you have, I don't know where the limit is, but this is anticipated as an anti-MP and not a just a transfusion. So this is under the regulations of ATMPs, but stem cells are apparently not.
But isn't it generally problematic that how the European Union regulation is built is a product
Yeah, yeah,
regulation,
yeah.
but cell and gene therapies is more about the process.
Mm,
You can use the same process, which can be then standardized and compliant to all their risk requirements, safety and efficacy. But
yeah,
the product, there is no single product. It depends on patient. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
I agree.
I think that there are generally problems concerning the authorization process, which is, as you already mentioned as well, not probably fitting well with the goals of actually
But of
reaching
course,
patients in time with the therapies.
yeah, but of course, I mean the Mediscience Agency or the regulatory units, they also need to build their experiences. And it's
Hmm.
not that many years that we have even had access to these new advanced medical products, right? So they have never kind of been challenged in the way before that they are now being challenged. So I guess
Cool.
for within the next 5, 10 years, they will hopefully settle on how to work around it, right? And how to frame it.
I think it's a good point that there's something about, on a kind of from a desk research point of view, it makes great sense to say, okay, we have some biological material. The more we manipulate it, the more it will become kind of more medicinal product. But a very good point, Laura, with that, is it processed product? What is actually regulated? And again, stem cells, the first stem cell transplantation was done in 1957. So we have many, many years of experience with that. But when did that become more pharmaceutical product or medicinal product? Where along the line, how much do you need to do? I think there's some very interesting kind of demarcation issues there to address, and how to then again regulate it the best way for all parties.
Yeah, but we can learn a lot from, from the whole stem cell area for the hematological stem cells, because they have built a very nice European system where they are also entering data on all the patients, and they have this, they're following the whole, the treatments and so on. They have a very nice system and an accreditation of the different hospitals to be able to treat patients and so on. Yeah. And that's in the hands of healthcare providers.
Yeah. So you can see, and Lotte, she tells us in the chat that it's the Committee on Advanced Therapy and Medicinal Product in EMA that makes this classification decisions. So that's also interesting. So it's a question. We have a board that is deciding whether it's one or the other.
Yeah.
So Laura, we have some research maybe to do there to look into their decisions.
Definitely. I'm already doing, definitely. I think it's also the way how EMA has always taught, or generally the regulator, as a market-orientated product regulation. But the gene therapies and cell therapies, they exceed those traditional frames. And that's why I think we have some serious issues, and the regulator is not able to step them out of the box, because we always did so. And if we check the data, which is very difficult to get in regard to ATMPs, then we see that actually there are more hospital exemption used as the therapies themselves authorized. And then we ask why there are more exemptions than the standard process. Obviously, I think it's not working very well, right?
And I think my colleagues in the Creatic project, they just did an analysis of use of these kind of exceptional routes for in Czech Republic, but also kind of the number of exceptional, exceptions to and use of kind of hospital exemption kind of exceptions had kind of increased significantly and become the kind of the common route. So there's also something about having something calling it an exception and then becoming the kind of the primary way of doing stuff. That's kind of, at least from a linguistic point of view, strange.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I think I will say thank you for today. Time is running, and I think all of us deserve to have a weekend at some point in the near future, I hope. So thank you to everyone. Thank you, Inge-Marie. It has been a pleasure, and thank you very much for participating in this and providing us all your fantastic insights and input. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you for good questions and comments. Stay tuned. You can do that by signing up to the Creatic ATMP newsletter. So looking forward to see all of you again to our next event or wherever else. And if you have any questions, comments on the ATMP domain, please feel free to reach out to me or any of my colleagues in the Creatic team or here in Siebel at the University of Copenhagen. So have a great weekend, everyone, and thank you.